Alright guys, being kind of on lockdown, it's given me a little bit of time to catch up on smaller things that I wanted to catch up on. Small things that I never really completed. I moved on to other projects, so now I'm kind of going back and fixing some things I wasn't 100% satisfied with. This is a 1967 SO42 Westphalia camper that I put a smaller custom wheel on there. I'll go over here and you can see it. Got the darker wood color, but it's a dish steering wheel. The flat steering wheels are pretty expensive, so I figured I'd get away with this one. But with it having that dish, if you look at the gap, let me get you better lighting here. If you look at this distance from here to the dash, about 4 or 5 inches. So as you're driving it, that steering wheel, being I'm not the smallest guy in the world, is kind of right in my chest area, so it's up too high. So what I want to try doing is shortening that. I could show you on the single cab over here. The reflection. If you see that gap between the steering wheel and the dash is only about 2 inches, 2.5 inches. So I like the height of that. I like the looks of it. And I like how they drive when the steering wheel's lower. It gives you a good thing to lean on. If you drive Volkswagens, you know that you're pretty much sitting straight up. So your steering wheel is basically what you end up leaning on most of the time. And when it's too high, I feel like a small kid riding a big wheel or something. It's just the wheel's too tall. So, what are we gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? This is the adapter for that steering wheel. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it apart. I'm going to pull the steering wheel off. Now it should come off relatively easy, unlike a stock steering wheel that's been on there for 40 years, which sometimes it takes a miracle to get those things off, but this one should come off relatively easy. There's the black horn button. That'll pop. There's 3 Allens in there, which takes off this top cap right here. That gives me access to the nut that holds the steering wheel on, and this adapter, which has the keyway. So it has the Woodruff key that holds it, and so you can turn. So I'm going to pull that all apart, and I'm going to see if I have any meat or excess material on this part here. If I do, I'm going to chuck it up in the lathe and I'm going to cut it down, and I'm hoping I could get, you know, an inch or so off, which will bring it down. If not, I may end up making an entirely new bottom piece adapter for this wheel out of aluminum on the lathe. I hope I don't have to go that far. I'm hoping I could just cut it down, call it a day. But we do what we have to do in order to be satisfied. So let me get you in there with me to see what I'm doing. Hopefully I can get you set up in there so you can see, and then we'll go for it and go ahead, get that wheel off, and get her down low. Alright, if the video ends up a little shaky, I apologize, but I'm going to try doing this one-handed so we can... Oh yeah, this was barely in there. Alright. There are those 3 Allen heads I was talking about. That'll take this top cap off. Let me pull that wire and then I'll bring you back. It's nice sitting here in Floyd. Floyd is my 67 bus here. You know, winter times up here seem all too long, so when you pull the covers off, get back in, it's like reuniting with an old friend, so to speak. Size that fits was a 15/16. So basically I'm going to pull that nut off and then I'll bring it back. Well, unexpectedly this thing is on there. I don't know if Volkswagen tapers the end of them shafts or what, but for some reason it is next to impossible to get steering wheels off of these steering shafts. Maybe it's just me, but I've pulled off a number of them and they always seem hard to come off. I thought it was just the stock steering wheel, but apparently it's this thing too, because you know, it'd probably come off a lot easier, but what it's doing is it got my mind thinking that, you know, being I've had so many problems in the past pulling these steering wheels off, that I might as well make a tool to make my life easier. Now, I already noticed a lot of times when I pull the wheel off, I'll already have this wire pulled through, so I already made a tool for that application, which I'll show you in a second. But notice that wire's there, so I have to make a different type of tool. Because the wire's there, I don't want to crush the wire with the puller. So this is the one I made previously, where there's no wire. Now, I don't know if you've ever done this before, but when you take your puller, hook it around the wheel, you're going to want to leave the nut on the end here. And with that being the case, you usually have to put a washer on it, and when you're tightening this thing, this wants to walk around, and then you end up trying to pull like this, and when you're pulling crooked, that's when you crack the Bakelite steering wheels. So I made this, which is basically a piece of steel that you thread your nut on there. This isn't the right one, but so your nut will be threaded on there, because you don't want to mushroom out this portion. If you push in here with the puller, it's going to ruin the shaft itself, and then you have a whole new set of issues on having to either use a thread filer or a die to rethread this. So with this threaded on, it protects the threads. You take this, puller fits in there. So basically what you're doing is you're centering up your puller inside the shaft. These go around the steering wheel and then it pulls it straight out. So that's all fine and dandy, but that will not work. Oh, I also drilled that will fit multiple size pullers. For example, here's a larger puller. Fits on there, fits on the smaller one. It's tapered on the inside so it centers itself. I don't know if you can see that. Let me see if I can. So it's tapered in there so it self-centers, and then there's also a relief for, you know, a lot of these pullers have little tips on there. So there's a little relief in there. So everything goes in center. On this one, with the wire, it won't work because obviously that wire won't fit through there. You'll end up crushing, and if you can't push the wire far enough in. So I'm going to make a new one. I've already started it a little bit, in which the wire will come through the adapter, and then I will have a puller for both. This one's going to be a little wider because I do wish I would have made this wider, because if I did I wouldn't need the washer because of the taper on there would have self-centered on the nut. So I'm making this one wider, improving the design, I guess. So, and plus I have to leave a little meat because after I drill a hole through this or center it, then I have to drill a smaller hole for that wire to run through. I'll set you up, I'll show you how this is going to work, and then we'll go from there. Maybe it's something that you may need or can do. I don't know, most people don't have a lathe, but you never know. The machining part's pretty interesting, so if you like to see machining, let me know. I can do plenty of it. So I mostly machine parts for Volkswagens and the you know, adaptions towards Volkswagens. So let me know if you want to see more machining, but today, being that my steering wheel's stuck, it just motivated me to make this piece that I've been wanting to make for a while. So let's do it. Alright, real quick to get you up to date. That's a piece of 1.5" round stock, solid. Basically what I did is I cut it to length. It was just a random piece I had laying around, so I faced it so this is smooth, and then I used carbide tip bit, and I basically just chamfered it here a little bit on the outside, and then I used a center drill to get it dead center to start my drilling point. So that's where I'm at this point. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a hole, a smaller hole about the diameter, so the wire and the electrical plug that's on the end of the wire can fit through, but the pulley or puller cannot fit through. So I'll start small, and then at this end I will use a bigger drill bit, similar to my other one. Drill that out, use the center drill again to give me a small relief at the bottom. So basically that will look like that in there, except with a hole that runs all the way through. And now after that I'll show you what I'll do. So let me get that far, and then we'll dial you in, get you set up. Hopefully you can see. Make sure, if you do have a lathe, surely you know the safety precautions. Alright, so you're set up. You're actually in the way of one of my little handles here, so. Alright, well, I had to switch drill bits, or I have to. This one worked great where the center was, but if you notice, the angle is off. This is like a self-centering bit, and this is more for what we need. You can see the two angles of the end of the drill bit are different, so this one will work better. Now, rather than putting an indicator on here to get the wobble out, this doesn't have to have that tight of tolerances. So what I'm going to do is this is called a dead center. I'm going to put it in the tailstock, run it up in there, and because I have the hole drilled all the way through, that should center it well enough for our purposes. I'm cranking that on pretty tight because I'm only gripping on to the very end, and I'm going to chamfer right here. Alright, got it all set up. I got the compound set, this part set to about 40 degrees is what we're going to cut in on. I switched the tool to a carbide tip cutter, small one. We're locked in, we're locked and loaded. Alright. Sorry guys, I thought I was filming. I lost you a little bit ways through there. But here's where I got. I chamfered that in, and then I also recessed it the diameter of this nut. I did that. It's kind of overkill, but now it'll self-center, and then even if it's trying to walk, it holds it in that little notch. I mean, it'll barely move. I don't know if you see that movement in there, but that's self-centered and notched in there. Now the only thing I have to do is I'm going to cut this edge down a little bit to give it more of a finished look, and so there's no sharp edges. I guess you can dial in for that one. Yeah, I apologize. I thought I was filming that. You're like, what the heck are you doing? How did you get that done? Alright, so now I'm just going to take this, tap that edge there. Alright guys, I think we're set up at the mill here. Well, at least prepped to set up. I'm not sure what you guys like to see. Let me know what you like to see. But changing pace today rather than just working right on Volkswagens. I'm using the machines to make stuff to work on the Volkswagens. So this is Bridgeport Mill. variable speed. Who knows, maybe some of you are interested in thinking about getting a mill. You just don't know how this machine functions. Believe me, you don't have to be a master machinist in order to run one of these things. I bought these to develop Volkswagen parts for TWVW, and I just really enjoy having the tools and the machines to, if I have an idea in my head, then I could turn it into reality using these machines. So similar to this project we're doing today with the steering wheel puller adapter. So this is Bridgeport. I'll set you up and we will switch to the tooling we're going to use, get the piece locked into the vise, and then we will drill out the slot that the wire is going to go through. Alright. So to do this, you loosen up that shaft, which goes all the way down through the machine into the tool, and it pulls that taper up into the machine. Alright, in order to do that, this lever here, to keep this from spinning, see, that'll spin. This is the brake. Put the brakes on, twist that loose, take the hammer, pop the taper, and that'll come out. And then do the reverse to put the new tool in. Sound like a plan? Battery's going dead. I'm going to change it real quick, bring it back. Alright, it's that easy. Again, brake, loosen that up, hit that with a dead blow or a rubber mallet. Dead blow works better. It'll knock that out, put the new one in, and go in reverse. Brake, tighten, good to go. Alright, now I'll set you up. I have to put the piece we're going to machine into the vise, and I'll show you how I do that real quick. All right. These are called parallels. Basically, these allow you to put your piece in the vise so it's level in the vise, and the vise will hold the piece but not the parallels. So It'll go in there, the vise will clamp on here, and then you're able to machine your piece. Easy enough. Goes in there. Crank down the vise. Obviously, can't machine with the end mill that low, so this here's the knee, the Z travel. Crank this, brings down the whole table. It'd be nice to have a power feed, but that's all right. Okay. Again, there's ways to find the dead center and all that, but we're not going to get into that. We're just pretty much messing around trying to make a part. This locks the quill, and this lever basically works like a drill press. Brings it up and down. For these purposes, we're just going to use that rather than, actually we can bring it up a little bit. And then we will get our depth and find our center hole, and then fire up the phase converter, the machine, and cut ourselves a little slot. Once you find your depth, this is the lock. You lock it down, and then this won't move anymore. Okay. Alright, sorry about the hum, that's a phase converter. We've got it centered enough. Basically I'm going to fire up the machine. We're going to drill down into that center hole a little bit and then cut a slot in any direction. It really doesn't matter because we're dealing with a circle, but just so we have a big enough slot that that wire could go through without getting crushed by the puller when we go to tighten it. So we'll just mill a little slot and then I'll show you where we're at. Alright, that's what we did. Drilled that little slot.
It's a tough fucker, huh?
I do not know what the deal is with this shit. Why? These are so difficult to take off.
Well, it's off, right?
Yeah. Alright, hit the record button. Turn it off. Well guys, to my disappointment, that was kind of a fail. It did get it off of there. It did center the piece, but it ended up cutting the wire anyhow. Because as you were tightening, or as I was tightening it, it spun it and then sliced the wire off. So I have to think about a redesign. But on a good note, making lemonade out of lemons, at least we showed a little machining. We have this off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to taper this top piece more up until this line, just to give it a little design. And then after looking at it, they've got it bored out so deep that I really can't save it. I thought this was all the way up to here, which I could have cut an inch off of, and that would have been in good shape, but they have it bored out for the nut and then a socket to fit in the nut, which I thought that sat up here. So if I was to cut into it, I can only cut maybe a 1/4 inch, otherwise the keyway starts popping out the top and it would interfere with the nut. So I'm not even sure if that's worth it. So kind of a fail. It's one of those days, things fail, but I am going to taper that. Might as well while it's out so it doesn't look so blocky, and then I'll repolish this thing and then put it back together and fix the wire. Damn it. Oh well. Mama said there'd be days like these. Alright, tapered it down a little more. As you can see, it's not so blocky. Narrowed it down. Still contemplating. I'm going to sleep on it. See if I can shorten this at all or figure out a way. If not, maybe even make a new bottom. But tomorrow's a new day. Be safe.